This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. That is Proverbs 19:20. Guys, this is normally the first podcast of the year, but we had a special podcast yesterday because we are announcing a brand new podcast, or I guess we already announced it, The Daily Blade. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to yesterday's episode. Joby Martin and I have launched a brand new show called The Daily Blade. You should definitely subscribe to that on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It is an audio-only podcast. But guys, just a quick commercial for that. It's just a daily podcast, Monday through Friday, and it's devotional content, but not like your typical devotional content. A lot of that stuff is kind of overproduced. You can tell it's transcribed and the guys are just reading it. A lot of them don't even write it. But this is going to be Joby and I and some friends of ours. We'll get to that later on with that podcast. But basically, he's going to take a week of doing these short, 3 to 6 minute, maybe around 5 minute devotional things. And it's mainly for guys. We know gals are going to listen to it, but it's mainly for Christian men. So if you're sitting there like, man, I just need something quick when I'm on my way to work. I just need a way to get scripture into my brain so that I can be meditating on it and praying through it throughout the day. That is what The Daily Blade is. Guys, go and subscribe. The Daily Blade on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But always want to start out with being thankful. Thank you so much to our donors. Again, we are a donation-based ministry. If you guys didn't know that, you do now. Undaunted.Life/donate. That is how we get this information into the ears of guys like you all over the globe. And that's how we've slowly but surely become the number one podcast for Christian men on the planet Earth. And another reason why that is because people have left reviews and shared this with a friend. In this episode today, I'm telling you guys, every single year, this is usually one of, if not the top episode in terms of shared episodes and episodes in terms of total listens and downloads, because it's easily shareable. Wherever you're listening to this right now, you can easily hit one or two buttons and share this with a buddy. Guys, this is a tone setter podcast for the year. Okay. And so we want this to get to as many people as possible. We want our show to jump up in the rankings. So if you want that to happen, you got to make sure you leave a review, 5 stars, and also share this with a friend. So on this episode, we're going to continue my beginning of the year tradition of ways to avoid being a crappy man. That is a series that we've done. I don't know how many years in a row that we've done that, but there's been different amounts in different years. I know last year was 17 because I was planning to do 17 again this year, but I literally added one like yesterday. So it's the top 18 ways to avoid being a crappy man in 2025. So guys use this podcast in a myriad of different ways. I know guys that will listen to this periodically throughout the year as a reminder. I've known guys that have taken this list of things that I'm going to put in here and they type it up and they put it like on their mirror when they're getting ready. They'll put a little, note card on their truck or something like that. And they'll just think through these things to be reminded of them, on a year in, year out basis or a day in, day out basis, however they decide to use it. Now, as always, with this list, there are going to be some that if you've listened to my show for any length of time that are going to be familiar because there's some that are just going to be on this list until I stop doing this episode series, okay? But then there are some that are new for this year. So you're going to see some that are on every year's, some that I pulled over from 2024, and some new ones for 2025. So guys, let's go ahead and get into the top 18 ways to avoid being a crappy man in 2025. Let's start out the first one, and that's start a gratitude list. And so this is something that I got from Joby Martin, the lead pastor of Church 1122, but he's got a gratitude list on his phone. And here are the rules, okay? You can do it digitally, you can do it written, you could, carve it into the side of a cave. It doesn't really matter. But it's at least one thing that you're grateful for every year that you've been alive, okay? And not all of them have to be equal in terms of their importance, and they don't have to be rank ordered, so you're constantly moving the rankings around. But starting a gratitude list is one of the best things that you can do, because whenever you're starting to be in your feelings a little bit, when you're starting to feel sorry for yourself, or maybe you got passed over for a promotion, or maybe your girlfriend broke up with you, or maybe you're down on your luck or something like that, you can always go back to this list and realize, man, I got a lot to be grateful for. So I actually want to quickly read my list that I've kept on my phone. So I am 38 years old, but I have 41 things on my list. So here we go. My salvation, Kelsey, my wife, James, my firstborn son, Eli, my secondborn son, my father, the Bible and how it got to us in modernity, the United States of America, the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, Joby Martin's mentorship and friendship, Faith Bible Church, which is the church I attend in Edmond, Oklahoma, my boys going to the school that they go to, Roman, my dog, he has since passed away, but I'm still very thankful that I got to have him. My foxhole, those are my dudes, right? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in general, and specifically my gym, The Forge in Edmond, Oklahoma. My truck, all of the international travel I've been fortunate enough to do. My home gym, hunting on my buddy Adam's land, hunting on my buddy Heath's land. My podcast audience, Undaunted Life in general, the Undaunted Life donors, the forging table. My book collection, my physical health and athleticism at my age, UFC fight nights, good whiskey, good cigars, whiskey and cigar nights, preferably on my back porch, the podcasts that I listen to, my flexible work schedule, my partnership with all the brands that I partner with. So that's Origin, Jocko Fuel, Primal Beef, Sorinex, and some more interesting ones that we got coming for this year. Meat, yes. One of the things I'm thankful for is just meat in general. Taste buds, my favorite music, mountains, my voice recovery up to this point. For those of you that don't know, back in 2024, I had not one but 2 vocal cord surgeries. And at one point, we thought I was never going to be able to talk above a whisper, much less be able to be a professional podcaster. So I'm very thankful for that. That I graduated with no student loan debt from my undergraduate or graduate work. Baseball, opening day, the World Series. So all of that is one. My relationship with the Robertson clan down there in West Monroe, Louisiana, and then Dominion. So for those of you that are not aware, we launched a brand new kind of coaching, mentorship group program called Dominion. You can get more information at Undaunted.Life/Dominion. We've allowed the wait list to be joined now. So applications were back in December of last year, but we have a wait list going for our next rounds of teams that will be opening up in June. But the successful launch of Dominion. Here we go. The successful launch of Dominion. There it was. I'm just very, very thankful for that. So that's my gratitude list, guys. And so it took me way longer to read that out loud than it would be just for me to skim it. And so for you, if you want something to kick your year off, if you want to avoid being a crappy man and being like, oh, woe is me and things are terrible and why do bad things always happen to me, all that kind of stuff, one way to get rid of that is to start a gratitude list. All right, next one here, and this is a new one for this year. It's don't celebrate people that take shortcuts. So I want to talk specifically about as it pertains to their body, because there are a couple things that have become very, very popular in the last couple of years, and it's leading to some very weird celebrations. So one of those is people that are getting, muscle development and physical performance with steroids or other harmful drugs. No, I'm not talking about peptides. No, I'm not talking about creatine and whey protein or stuff like that. I'm talking about guys that are using steroids and different things that are very harmful to the body. They're buying it from like SwoleRhino.com or whatever, and they're just like having some gym bro tell them how much to buy and how much to inject into their bodies. And then those people are obviously getting physical development, and then a lot of people will give them compliments on that physical development. But they're taking a shortcut. Right? They're not just eating meat, getting a lot of sleep, and lifting hard. They're, cheating. They're taking a shortcut. But then also you have weight loss that's via lap band surgery or GLP-1 agonists. That's like Ozempic, Mounjaro, and then things like that. And so you'll see these people that are very overweight, very out of shape, and as opposed to changing their lifestyle, as opposed to doing the thing that is most beneficial for them overall, not just bodily, they just want to inject something into their leg or have a surgeon take care of their bad habits for them. And so here's the thing. You'll have someone that'll be overweight, and then they'll get on one of these things like Ozempic or something like that, and they'll lose all the weight, and then it's like, oh my gosh, girl, you look so good. Or a guy was a little bit flabby, a little bit out of shape, starts taking these crazy supplements, not really supplements, these crazy drugs that are basically deleting years off the end of his life and making his heart, on the verge of exploding. It's like, oh man, you're so ripped and you're so jacked. We need to stop celebrating people that take shortcuts, because that's exactly what this is. Now, if people specifically that are very overweight, if they are never going to have discipline when it comes to exercise and diet, would it be better that they be smaller? Yes. I mean, just the fact by virtue of their size, that is going to lead them to a whole lot of negative outcomes as it comes to all-cause mortality, right? They're going to have way more health problems in general as compared to a healthier population, and they're going to die earlier. So yeah, of course I would want them to be smaller, but there's no such thing as a free lunch, no pun intended here, because they're already finding tons of problems with people that are using Ozempic, Mounjaro, and other GLP-1 agonists to lose weight, right? And we've known for decades that guys that take steroids and other crazy performance enhancers, that there is a cost to that, right? You look good in the short term, you can perform well in the short term, but you're doing things bad for you in the long term. So the question I have for you guys is, why do we continue to keep celebrating those people? Because a lot of times you have to go out of your way to celebrate somebody, because very few people will walk up to you. They've lost 75 pounds because of Ozempic, and they're not going to walk up to you in church and be like, how do I look? What do I look like? You have to go out of your way to celebrate those people, to comment on their page, to, tell them in public that you think they look great and all those types of things. Let's just stop doing that. I think we need to stop incentivizing people doing things that are overall net negatives for their health. And so that's a way to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, is stop celebrating people that take shortcuts. All right, next one here. I think this is a new one. Yeah, this is a new one. This is the one that I added yesterday, okay? Because this came up a lot in the last 2 weeks, and especially with the Dominion interviews that I just got through doing. So I would hear people say this, and I would also read it in their applications, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I've heard people say and use this phraseology a bunch. So I decided to address it. So that's why there's 18 ways this year as opposed to 17. So here it is. No more I struggle with blank crap. Okay? No more I struggle with blank. No more of that language. Because here's what I read and here's what I heard a lot of people say. Man, I really struggle with being in shape. Man, I really struggle with, being patient with my family. Man, I really struggle with pornography. And it was always struggle. I really struggle with this. But here's the reality, guys. You need to change your ideology. You need to change the framing of how you're using particular words, because if indeed you had struggled in those areas, you would have overcome them. So follow me here. Let's go back to the physical example. If you had really struggled with getting in shape, then you would be in shape. Because what does being in shape require for most people that aren't just like naturally gifted Adonises? It requires struggle. Because you struggle to get out of bed early in the morning, earlier than you want to. You struggle to get out of that warm bed. You struggle to get ready to go to the gym, whether that's a Globo gym you drive to or the gym in your garage or something like that. That is a struggle. When you're going through the workout and you're doing things that you hate, like squatting and deadlifting and burpees and sprints and airdyne and all those stuff that I hate, you have to struggle to get through those things. When you don't feel quite right, or when you pulled a little something and you just don't really feel like yourself, you struggle your way through those workouts. And guess what? 60, 90, 120 minutes later, you're done. You're done with your workout. You've struggled through, you've been resilient, and now you're on the other side. And the rest of your day is going to probably be easier than that workout was. That's how I structure my life. I've told people this and they don't really believe me. If I never had to work out again and I would get the benefits of exercise, like the health benefits and how I look and body composition and all that, I would never exercise. I hate it. I hate it so much. People are like, no, Kyle, you clearly love it. You do it all the time. It's like, no, it's just what's required of me. If I'm going to be physically resilient, I have to exercise. If I'm going to be mentally resilient, I have to exercise. It's all about the struggle. So if you are currently dealing with something, right, like being out of shape or having a pornography or masturbation problem or any of the things that might be the thing in your life, enough with the I struggle with language. But if you're going to use the I struggle with language, that means you better be on the pathway to fixing whatever the problem is. You better be on the pathway to being healthy. You better be on the pathway to fixing your marriage. You better be on the pathway to getting masturbation and pornography out of your life if you're going to use that language. So if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, no more I struggle with blank language. All right, next one here. Do really hard things that constantly challenges your ego and teach you something. So here's the thing about a lot of guys. A lot of guys just want to do the thing that comes naturally to them. And so this is in all categories. So if you're naturally an athlete, you are drawn more to the athletic pursuits. If you're naturally more intellectual, you like to read and ponder, you're going to be drawn to those pursuits. The problem is you silo yourself into the things that you're already good at. And the other problem with that is that doesn't guarantee that you will always be good at those things. So obviously Father Time is undefeated. As you age, you will not be as athletically gifted or explosive as you were perhaps when you were in your teenage years or your 20s or your early 30s. That's just the reality. You're never going to be as good of an athlete at an elevated age as you are at a younger age. And so if you are constantly putting yourself into situations where you're just doing things that you're good at, that's not a good positive thing. One of the things that I talk about a lot, and I'll probably mention several times throughout this episode, is jujitsu. If you've got an ego problem, I promise you jujitsu is going to fix that. It may take a short while, it may take a long while. I was somewhere in the middle, maybe medium to long-term thing, but jujitsu will fix it. Because you are constantly going to be the nail and you're going to be surrounded by hammers. That's just how it's going to be. Even when you get good. I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, so I'm not completely worthless, but I still have practices where I'm like, have I trained before? Like I swear I've trained jiu-jitsu before, because if a jury had to deliberate to convict me of being a jiu-jitsu fighter, I'm not sure they would have been able to have enough evidence to convict me if they had just watched that practice. But that's part of the point, guys, is it's really, really hard. And it's really challenging mentally and physically. And so I have to continue going that direction because I constantly learn about myself. I learn about my limitations, and I learn about other people because of things like jujitsu. But for you, it might be doing long endurance races. For you, it might be studying books that are somewhat beyond you intellectually, right? So, you're normally reading like these novels that are easy to follow, and maybe you're reading something that's a little bit more complicated, more characters, more storylines, a lot more to the narrative, a lot more to the plot. Maybe it's going into parts of the Bible that you've always kind of left alone because they were really hard to grapple with. You didn't really understand what was going on. Maybe that's it. But guys, that is the key to unlock a myriad of things for you that are all going to be positive. So guys, if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, do really hard things that constantly challenges your ego and teach you something. All right, we've got another new one for this year. Practice pre-decision. Practice pre-decision. I don't mean practice like, all right, do it 10 times and then you'll do it better later. I mean, just this is something you do. You practice pre-decision. And so again, a lot of these things are going to have things that are related to one another, and I'm going to say it a bunch of different ways, hoping it'll land with you guys. But a lot of guys wait to decide. So let's go back to the early morning workout example. Alarm goes off at 5 o'clock. And in that moment, you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to get up and work out. Boy, that's way too late, right? Because you're still tired. You just got jolted awake. You're in your warm bed. And the thought of getting out of that environment and going and doing something really, really difficult physically is probably not a good thing. And so for how many of you, this used to be the way that I would do it, is, oh, you know what? My neck kind of hurts a little bit, or, I've kind of had a rough week. I think I need a mental health day. I think I need to just kind of take it easy. Man, another 45 minutes to an hour of sleep would really do me well. I really need some more recovery. And then you just go back over and you fall asleep. And for the rest of the day, you haven't worked out. Because here's the thing with exercise, the bill comes due every morning, right? I can't work out today for tomorrow. I can't work out this week for the rest of the year. Like, I have to work out today for today. And then tomorrow the bill comes due again. And if I'm going to be physically resilient and be in shape, I got to do the stuff that requires tomorrow. But so many people don't practice pre-decision. Let me use a different example because I've really leaned on the physical so far. I've talked to a lot of men here recently of all ages, but several young men as well that are like, hey, and they'll use the struggle language. I struggle with porn. And so, I explained to them the whole idea of like, hey, you don't really struggle with it. If you struggle with it, you would have gotten past it by now. But yeah, after we get past that, it's like, look, part of your problem is not that you have a porn problem, say you have a masturbation problem. Okay? Because obviously no one just sits around watching porn. They're always using it as their masturbatory aid so they can climax, right? But if you pre-decide and you make a blanket pre-decision that I don't masturbate, well, you don't need to look at porn. Right? You're getting upstream of the problem, right? So that'd be like you have headaches and you go get, your brain scan and, you got a brain tumor and the doctor gives you Tylenol for your headache. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you're not like, I got a tumor growing in my head that's going to kill me. It's like, but this will help you with your headaches. No, you have to really get to the source of the problem. But if the problem, like in this case, masturbation is the issue, you pre-decide that you're not going to do that. Which people are like, well, it can't be that easy. No, it is that easy. And the same goes for alcohol. The same goes for a lot of prescription drugs and different things, because here's the deal. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't want to talk to you about. People like to treat everything like it's an addiction and not a proclivity or a choice. So that's expanded into the world of sex. So people have a pornography addiction, right? People have a sex addiction. But most people don't have that, because an addiction means you literally can't not do it, right? You're addicted, and or it means that your body can't function without having whatever that is. Okay? So there are people that like to drink and they drink too much, but they're not alcoholics. They're not addicted to alcohol. So in all of these cases, and there's a myriad of others that I'm sure some of you thought of, practice pre-decision. Oh boy, when I drink whiskey, I make bad decisions because I can't just have 1 or 2 whiskeys over several hours. I have 10, and then I've driven home before. I've woken up in other people's beds that I didn't know. I've gotten in fights. I've ended up in handcuffs. So I'm just going to pre-decide that I'm not going to drink whiskey. Okay, boom, pre-decision. And then guess what, guys? There's no stress when you go out with your friends. Inform your friends, and if they're not douchebags, they'll help you with the decision that you have pre-made, right? Pre-decide today that you're going to be patient with your wife. All right, so I got like a little thing on my phone that helps me with pre-decision with my wife. Pursue her, win her, give her a reason to choose me, think the best of her, right? Patience, like being patient in those moments when I don't want to be patient. I'm practicing pre-decision so that when the thing happens that I would normally be tempted to go the wrong way, I've already pre-decided that I'm not going to do those things, right? Or it works in the positive as well. You pre-decide that you're going to do the healthy thing. So before you get to the restaurant, and gosh, you just love this restaurant's fried chicken, and gosh, you really love the seasoning you put on French fries and all that, but you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to be in better shape and all that. So you're pre-deciding, okay, I'm going to get some natural food. I'm going to get some steak with some eggs and, some Brussels sprouts or something like that. I don't know. That's kind of a weird meal, but you guys get what I'm saying. You're pre-deciding to do the thing before you get to the place where you're going to be tempted to do the wrong thing. Does that make sense? So practice pre-decision. If you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, practice pre-decision. All right, another one. This is one from every single year, and I will always continue to do this, and it's don't be late. For the love of God, don't be late. I use the same example every year, but there was a dentist who had a good friend that would come and, he would, get his dental work done for his good friend. But because the dentist was a good friend of this guy, the dentist felt like, I don't have to go over the top and really be there for this guy and all those types of things. So he'd always push his appointments a little bit, and he would always be late. And so one year he gets there and he's there on time for his appointment because he's a very astute guy. And he was being pushed back again, and he goes, you know what, just give me all my files. I'm going to go to a different dentist. And, his buddy, his dentist in the back was he heard the kerfuffle going on outside, and he kind of comes up, he's like, hey, what's the problem? He's like, dude, you just keep doing this. You keep, not valuing my time. You keep pushing me, and that's just not right. I've got places to be as well. And I also had a guy I really loved, but it's a former manager of mine. He would be places on time. And so people would come to meet with him at his office, and he would purposefully start the meeting 10 or 15 minutes late to make himself seem more important. Okay, so he would waste other people's time so that he could feed his own narcissism. Okay, this is bad news. That's a terrible thing to do, because what you do when you are late is you are communicating to someone that my time is more valuable than your time. And I think we can all agree that the only commodity that we can't regenerate or get back is time. So when you are late, you are wasting people's time. And so you have to think of this clearly. So if there's a committee meeting and you're one of the people on this committee or in this, work group or something like that, and there's 10 of y'all that show up to this meeting, and you show up 10 minutes late to this meeting, you think, oh, I'm just 10 minutes late. No, actually, you're 90 minutes late because you were the 10th person. The other 9 people got there on time. So you wasted 10 minutes of all of their time. You are an hour and a half late. But we don't think of things that way. Seriously, if I ran a large organization, we would never start anything late. Because part of the reason why people continue to show up late is because we don't hold to specific times. So if you say the meeting's at 9 a.m. and Bob hasn't shown up yet, you'll be like, all right, well, let's wait for Bob to get here. So you've communicated to everybody in the room that Bob is more important. Also, Bob the loser, Bob the guy that can't show up on time, Bob the guy that can't be conscientious enough to get his crap taken care of to where he can show up on time, he is more important. And we need to wait for Bob so that the rest of us can get going, as opposed to starting the meeting. And when Bob walks in 5 minutes late, you don't even acknowledge that he's late. Guess what? You're 5 minutes behind. You better mentally catch up, because we're not going to stop and we're not going to repeat ourselves. Now, obviously things come up. You're on your way. You're going to be on time. Kid throws up in the car. Yep, you get a flat tire. Something happens at the house, all the electricity goes off, and you got to get that taken care of before the babysitter shows up. And guys, I know things like that happen. That's not what I'm talking about. That's clearly not what I'm talking about. But even in those circumstances, you're going to be late before you're late, right? So let's say you have one of those circumstances, kid throws up in the car, you got to turn around, double back, get them cleaned up, and then turn around. Guess what? You already know you're going to be late for your first thing. So you let the person on the other end of that appointment, or the person in the meeting, or your boss, or the person waiting on you, you let them know, I am going to be late. My GPS shows I am 30 minutes away, and I know our meeting is supposed to start in 10 minutes. The worst thing that you can do is you're late. You know you're late because, of course you're aware enough to know that you're late. And then the person has to text you. The person waiting on you has to text you or call you to be like, hey, where are you at? Are you dead? Are you dying in a ditch literally at this exact moment, which would be the only acceptable excuse for you being late, right? Why does that person have to reach out to you? And then you're like, oh yeah, this thing happened, and oh my gosh, and I'm only 5 minutes away, and all this kind of stuff. It's great, you have completely inconvenienced me and everybody in this room, and also you didn't give me a heads up. You can literally talk to your phone without it being in your hand and tell it to text somebody for you, and you couldn't figure out a way to make that happen? Guys, it's a crappy thing to do, to show up late. So if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, don't be late. Hey guys, real quick. As you've heard me describe before, I am incredibly conservative about the supplements that I take. I spent years being terrified of putting different products in my body because I didn't know what they were made with or if it was going to be kind of fly-by-night companies using all kinds of crazy ingredients. So I've always wanted to partner with an American company that only uses the highest quality ingredients, and that's why I want to remind you that we are partnered with Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is Jocko Willing's supplement company that is based here in the United States. So what are some of my favorite products that they make? So they make whey protein powder, and guys, they just released a cookies and cream flavor not that long ago, and it is ridiculously good. Make sure you use it with milk. It makes it even better. They also make clean energy drinks. I finally decided what my favorite was, and that's pink lemonade. That is my favorite of all their flavors. But they also have the best tasting greens powder on the market. I prefer the peach flavor myself. They also make pre-workout and ready-to-drink protein. So I actually mix the ready-to-drink protein in my boys' milk, and they love it. They're constantly like, Dad, banana milk, banana milk. So we got to hook that up in the Thompson household. But I also use their krill oil, fish oil, creatine, vitamin D, and their sleep aids. And guys, they've got new stuff coming out all the time and a bunch of stuff I didn't even have time to mention. Guys, if you take your health and wellness seriously, then you simply can't afford to put cheap and inconsistent supplements inside of your body. Try Origin out today by going to www.jockofuel.com. That's jockofuel.com. Use the promo code Undaunted to get 10% off your order. Again, that's jockofuel.com, promo code Undaunted to get 10% off your order. All right, the next way to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, learn to fight or become a weapon. I've described it both ways over the years. So here's the thing. There are two things that guys really overestimate in terms of their ability. Number one, just their general ability to fight. And number two, their willingness to act immediately if a kinetic situation happens. Okay, so with the first one, there are guys, maybe it's because they were a good athlete, or maybe it's because they're tall. This is like a thing with big guys, fat guys. They just think because I am this size, I'm going to be okay in a fight. Now, if you're Bob Sapp from back in, the pride fighting days where you're 400 pounds with abs, okay, even though you're not really that good of a fighter, it's probably going to go okay with you in most street situations. But for the rest of us, for all of us normies, right, people that are normal-sized people, guys just overestimate their ability to fight. I've literally heard multiple people say, you know what, man, I'm just going to see red and the bodies are just going to drop. It's like, well, no, the odds are way more likely that you will see red and then you will see nothing because you're going to get taken out of the fight against your will. You're going to get knocked out. You're going to get choked out. You're going to get shot, stabbed, something like that. That's more likely than you just dropping bodies like you're Steven Seagal in the 1980s or something like that. Like, that's not real. There's a reason why you can't go back and watch those movies and not see how dumb they look. Is because we have been marinated in 30 years of the Ultimate Fighting Championship and just MMA, Vale Tudo in general. And so we know all these round kicks and all this super fancy stuff. Guys aren't going flying. That's not how this works, right? If you watch enough street fights, if you've seen enough street fights in person, if you've seen enough of that kinetic action, you realize that it takes a trained person for the most part to be able to do well in those situations for the, over the long haul. But also most guys don't really understand the hesitation that's going to come to where you might know how to fight or you might not know how to fight. But if you hesitate, what is it? He who hesitates is lost. I think that applies here as well. So there are kinetic situations I've seen tons of videos of this where if the guy would have just acted sooner, they would have been safe. Their family would have been safe. The people around them they were trying to protect or could have protected would have been saved, but they hesitated. I've seen also in like mass shooter or mass casualty situations where there are people that immediately run, there are people that immediately look to fight, and then there are people that absolutely freeze, that just absolutely and completely freeze. So a lot of this is about mindset. So when you say learn to fight, am I talking about training a legitimate fighting style like jiu-jitsu or wrestling or Western boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai? Yes, I am talking about that. I'm not talking about karate. I'm not talking about Wing Chun or Kung Fu or any of these made up, I'm going to use your chi to like move your energy away from me and I'm going to absorb your punches with my woo-wah or whatever. Yeah, I'm not talking about any of that. Yes, I'm saying that's what you need to learn how to fight. You need to actually learn these modalities, learning to use your body in order to fight. Do I mean training with firearms and knives and different things like that? Great. Yes, like concealed carry, I am for all those things. But it's also about mindset. Because let's just take an extreme scenario. Let's say you conceal carry and you don't just conceal carry, you shoot quite a bit and you shoot when you make sure your heart rate's elevated and you're ready for those situations. Great, you've done that training. You've also figured out, how to use, blades on your body and different things. You've also trained jiu-jitsu for a few years and you know some Western boxing and some different things like that. So you're comfortable in all those scenarios. But if you've not pre-decided that you would take a life to save a life, you will hesitate. Again, a lot of these are weaving together. If you haven't pre-decided that you would hurt another human being to protect an innocent human being, you will hesitate. I saw a video years ago where it was all these moms that were, would you do anything to protect your kids and blah, blah, and all that. And these moms just given this generic general situation, were like, yeah, of course I would do that. But then the person got specific and was like, would you kill someone in order to save your baby? And mom after mom after mom said, oh no, I don't think I could ever do that. It's like, like 5 seconds ago, you were pretending you were mama bear, and now you're given a specific scenario where you would have to take a guilty life, a non-innocent life, to protect not just some innocent life, but the innocent life of your baby, and you couldn't get there. So for a lot of you guys, when I say learn to fight, when I say become a weapon, I mean physically, but I also mean mentally. You have to get yourself there. So if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, learn to fight, become a weapon. So this next one here, it's kind of a combo one. It's kind of new and old, so I'll just get to it. Be extra nice to support staff and service providers, and make sure to say thank you, okay? So I have been in this habit for a very, very long time. I saw a model with my parents. This isn't even like chivalry. This is just basic manners, right? So call it Southern hospitality or whatever. But when support staff, so someone checking me in at a hotel, any of the staff that's helping me get onto or off of a flight, anyone that's serving me my food or my drinks or anything like that, I'm always extra nice and extra thankful to these people. And I always make sure to say thank you. Because there is something very interesting going on when it comes to, I guess, the help class in the United States. And I don't mean that in the slightest bit demeaning way, but people that are in sort of the helping side of support staff. A lot of these people have lost their ability to really communicate in a polite way. I've seen that just across the board. People don't know how to say thank you. They don't know how to say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And a lot of these people, part of it is because they weren't taught it growing up, so they haven't seen it, but it's also not reciprocated. Right? Or it's not being shown to them. They're not having people be polite to them. I brought up this story several times about being at a gas station, and I go up to the front, hey, how you doing today? And they didn't even say words. They just, meh. They never looked me in the eye. They never looked up. They had like their phone out, and they were like watching some anime thing or whatever. So they are like booping my stuff. And then I'm like, all right, this is weird. So I pay, and then it's all right, have a good day. And they just mumbled, right? No, thank you, or yes, sir, you have a good day. And guys, it's so rare now that when someone is over the top polite, and I guess not. Let me back up a little bit. I'll buy that back a little bit. When someone is just generically polite, when they say yes, sir, no, sir, hey, is there anything else I can do for you? Hey, how can I make this situation better for you? I'm like, can I see your manager? I just want to give you a hug in front of them so they know how good of a job that you just did, when this is just the way that it used to be. And maybe I'm rose-colored glasses a little bit because I grew up in Oklahoma and I was just surrounded by people that would literally give you the shirt off your back. They didn't see it as a microaggression to hold the door open for you if you're a woman or any of those types of things. But in the world that I live in the world that you live in, especially if you're a Christian, you should be like giving to people that you may never see again. The least that you can give them is your attention and your politeness. Make eye contact with them. Ask them if there's something that you could do for them, like any of those types of things. So if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, be extra nice to support staff and service providers, and make sure to say thank you. It's always a good idea. All right, here's another one. I'll do a couple in a row that are every year ones. And this is one that's always a little hard for me to talk about because I have to remember how stupid I used to be. Don't let sports ruin your night. Don't let sports ruin your night. So I talk about this every year, okay? So I used to watch sports, and I really, really cared about the outcome, and specifically the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm a big baseball guy. Obviously, there's 162 regular season games plus the playoffs. And so if you think about that, that is hundreds of pitches per game. And if you are living and dying with every one of those pitches, that is a problem. Even if you're just living and dying with each one of those games, that's a problem. But the St. Louis Cardinals, when I was in my 20s, if they lost, a game in May, right, I would be apoplectic. I would be cussing and screaming, and I would go to bed mad, and I'd wake up angry or sad, and it only got worse the farther they got into, a playoff run or even a World Series run. I remember going and seeing a World Series game. This would have been the 2011 World Series, Game 2 in St. Louis against the Texas Rangers. Cardinals had a lead going into the ninth inning, and Jason Mott, the closer, blew the lead. Okay, in the ninth inning, they ended up losing the game. We were staying at a friend's house near St. Louis, and when I went over to their house, I couldn't even talk. I was so mad, right, that this team that I wasn't a part of, that they would dare to lose a game because I wanted them to win. How dare they lose this game? And so this family's opening up their home to my wife and I, who's sitting there like, oh my God, what did I marry? And they're opening up their home to me and showing me hospitality, and I couldn't even return it to them or reciprocate because I was mad. I was mad that my team won, right? And I was quiet the whole drive home from St. Louis to Oklahoma City the next day. And I look back on that person, and I look back on that time period like, you absolute moron. But people just do that. They will let their entire being be disrupted by their chosen team not winning. A team that they don't have, that they have no connection to other than that they have chosen to be a fan of that team, and they've bought some merch and maybe even some game tickets. That's it. You got grown men, right? 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, grown men that will have their entire week ruined because a group of 18, 19, and 20-year-old football players didn't do the things required in order for their team with their chosen jersey and colors to win, right? And they will scream at the screen. They will scream at the ball game. They'll scream at the players. They'll scream at the referees. They'll scream at the coaches. They'll scream at the other team, all because they want their team to win. And look, I'm a sports guy, but I've gotten to the point now where if I can feel myself really caring about the outcome of the game, I'll just skip it. I'll just skip it. Maybe you might be like, well, that's really immature of you. It's like, well, no, it's pretty immature that I still feel that way sometimes, but it's the exact opposite that I'm avoiding it because it's going to make me a worse husband and a worse father. And can I imagine, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. If they see me screaming and hollering at a screen, like getting all mad or even getting all crazy happy, like those videos aren't cute online, guys. When you see these little kids that are like losing their minds watching sports, that's learned behavior. And they learned it from you, right? That's not a positive thing. It's not cute, but by any stretch of the imagination. And so, like, again, I kind of feel like whenever I avoid games that I really care about the outcome, if there's a big comeback win or a walk-off home run or all that, am I missing that? Yeah, but that is worth it to me. I will miss stuff like that in order to lose all the negatives because I've ruined a lot of nights for a lot of people by being a selfish jerk as it pertains to sports, again, that I wasn't actually playing in. And so, guys, if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, don't let sports ruin your night. All right, next one here, straight up, no porn, no jerking off, okay? Again, I've heard the struggle language. I've heard all the excuses. I've heard I tried accountability and I tried this software and I tried all that. Guess what, guys? Pre-decide that you're not going to jerk off. That takes care of the porn problem, and it also takes care of the masturbation problem. So as I've talked about on the show, that used to be a big problem for me, watching porn and masturbating and those types of things. Hasn't been a problem for like 16 years, right? That's a problem for a long time ago. But the thing for me is I know that is my bend. I don't have a chemical bend. So I can have a whiskey or two and have no issues. And I've never had any illicit drugs of any kind whatsoever. It's because I don't want to even test if I would be like into those things or if I would like them. I'm drawn to the aesthetic, right? I'm drawn to the voyeuristic, checking women out or watching porn or looking at pictures online. That's who I used to be. So I had to get to the point where I just said, I just don't do this anymore. And the thing is in this particular world, I feel like we complicate this way too much. And again, I'm not anti-software, having software on your computer. I'm not anti having accountability partners. I'm not anti having accountability groups. The problem with all those things is they have massive holes in them. Because guess what, guys? You know how to get around your software. You know how. You know how to lie to your accountability brothers. A lot of you are good at it. You do it all the time. You know how to hide it from your wife. She caught you once. She'll never catch you again. You're just too good at it now, right? But, whatever's done in the dark will be brought to the light, so just keep that in mind, fellas. But you know how to get around all those things. So why are you playing games with this? Why are you flirting with a sin category that, biblically speaking, is the only sin that can be against yourself? We're not taught to hang out near sexual immorality. We're taught to flee from sexual immorality, right? We're taught to flee from lust, not even be anywhere near it. And so for those of you that are struggling in your parlance, maybe, hopefully you're going to shift that this year. I need you to do something for me, okay? I need you to memorize 2 Corinthians 10:5, okay? We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought and make it accountable to Christ. That is not here on my screen. I believe I memorized it in the NIV. I'm pretty sure I just nailed it. Guys, I'm telling you this is going to be a little bit crass. So for the ladies listening to this, we love our lady listeners. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I promise you it's going to land for some guys, okay? So just listen. The next time you're bored and you've got a boner And normally what you would do is you would turn on porn, or you would go into your mental Rolodex or your highlight reel or something like that and then throw your hand in your pants. Instead, I want you to recite 2 Corinthians 10:5 out loud, if it's not weird to do it out loud wherever you're at, or in your head. I'm serious. And if you've memorized it in the NASB and you're still feeling a lot of temptation, then go ahead and memorize it in the NASB, the NIV, and the ESV, and say them all three back to back. And if you need extra help, memorize it in another language. You think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding at all. I want you to get the German or the Italian or the Yiddish or whatever, and I want you to learn how to say 2 Corinthians 10:5 in that language, because what you're doing is you're changing the wiring of your brain to, whenever I used to do this modality, this would be the outcome, and now we're changing the trajectory of the initial modality. That's what we're doing, okay? So if you are really wanting to get over that this year, if you're like, gosh, this porn thing's got a hold on me, I need to get rid of it, don't buy in to the addiction language. It's BS. It's garbage. Don't buy into it. Or even if you believe that it's not garbage, treat it like it is. I promise you, my way of doing it is better than spending all this money on all these other things that you know how to get around that aren't going to work. Because here's the thing. I think most of you guys that quote unquote struggle with porn, you don't actually struggle with it. You like it. You want to keep watching it, right? And also, I think you like being a victim. I think you like walking into your little Sunday school or your little, pansy men's group, and you sit around in a circle and you're like, oh, I made it a week without looking at porn and masturbating. Then I fell off the wagon and blah, blah. And everyone's just, oh man, okay, well, make it 10 days this time and all that. All you guys, you like doing it. You like doing it. And why wouldn't you? Right? One of the best feelings a person can feel is ejaculation. Of course you would want to keep doing that. But you're destroying yourself. You're destroying your positive and healthy sex drive that was given to you as a gift from God. You're destroying your marriage. It is absolutely destroying your wife. That she knows that you're still doing it. That if your kids found out, you would be so mortified of that. Or if you found out that they were doing it, you would be mortified. But none of that is a big enough deal for you to actually take care of this issue because you like doing it because you're a selfish prick. Well, not enough. Enough of that. This is the time right now that you're going to pre-decide, I don't do that anymore. If you decide you're not going to masturbate, you're no longer going to look at porn. If you decide to inject Scripture into the time period mentally when you would normally go to a negative and sinful, lustful place, it is better for you. 2 Corinthians 10:5. If you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, no porn, no jerking off. All right, this next one, it is a combo, kind of a new and old. All right, if you're going to be present, be present. If you're going to be present, be present, okay? So in years past, I've described this as treat your presence as a present or get rid of your smartwatch. So let me start with the smartwatch thing and we'll get into the other side. So some people are just flat out rude because they're just rude, terrible people. And so they will be at a meeting or they'll be hanging out with you and they'll be across from you and you'll be talking and they'll be like, and they got their phone out. Yeah, okay. Oh no, I can message them and listen to you. No, I'm listening. Yeah, yep. Okay, so that's like the most rude you can be, right? That's like when someone's talking to you and you start talking to somebody else. It's like, okay, you horrible person. Just punch that person in the throat. But people have gotten smart. So what they will do is they'll take their phone out and they'll make a show of putting their phone face down on the table. So you can still feel it vibrate, but they're not going to, look at it as much. But then they got a smart watch with all the notifications turned on. So you'll be talking and they'll be like, yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. What was it? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just like, I've just got a little, just one sec. Okay, yeah, sorry, what was that? This is worse. The watch part is worse. I promise you, it's worse, okay? You do not need text messages on your wrist. You just don't. You don't need phone calls on your wrist. So I've got a smart watch that I've made dumb. I have all the notifications turned off. I don't want to know when I've gone over 10,000 steps. I don't want to know if someone's trying to get a hold of me. I don't need that. I've already got my phone, which is like an extension of my body, right? I've already got that. So why in the world do I need the smartwatch? Okay. If your smartwatch is keeping you from giving attention to the people that are standing right in front of you, stop it. But let's broaden this out a little bit more in terms of if you're going to be present, be present. So I've had a bad habit with my boys, especially when they were younger, because they're little kids, what do they know? Where I'll be with them in the floor while they're playing, but I'm looking at my phone. And now I've already got the excuses ready made, guys. I'm a content creator, right? How can I create content if I'm not absorbing content? How can I know what's going on in the world around me if I'm not absorbing stuff from the world around me? I need to absorb news. I need to absorb videos, and I need to absorb culture, and I need to absorb tweets. And I need to absorb these DMs and all these different posts on Instagram so that when the exact right comment needs to come up in an interview or in a solo episode, that I can just spout it out of my wonderfully smart and astute mouth. And I need all those things, right? Or, hey, I'm on my email. Look, this is a client. I mean, these people pay me, so I got to be able to respond. This is my business. But the reality is your kids don't care about any of that. They don't care about any of that. They just want you, Dad. They want your undivided attention. They want, when they're trying to tell you a story and they're 3 years old and the story is like, I found this thing and, well, it's got a cap on it and I was in the closet and I farted. Right? That's a 3-year-old story. That's a typical 3-year-old story. And guess what? Did that change your life? Did it help you grow dendrites in your brain? Did it help you create new pathways where you can lead to more flourishing for humans around the globe? No. But it was the most important thing that your kid could think to say to Dad in that moment. So why not give him your full attention? Right? With your wife, like my wife and I were at dinner the other night, and I looked to my right, to her left. This family was sitting at the table. Every single one of them was on their smartphones. All of them. Varying ages, none of them were talking to one another. And so perhaps the dad has an excuse. Maybe the mom is an influencer online and she needed to respond to something because it pertained to something that could add to the bottom line of the family. Maybe. But everybody? And every time we looked over there, guys, the same thing was happening. Even once the food came out. They couldn't be bothered to put their phones down. And I don't know, I wasn't looking at their phones. Maybe they were texting, maybe they were tweeting, maybe they're watching YouTube, maybe they're playing some sort of game. But they were just dead in their phones, not connecting with the people that are right there in front of them. And so for you guys, I want you to think about those times when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here with my family. I don't remember the last time I looked up. That's a problem, right? And if your phone, which it is for me, if your phone is part of your business and in making things and creating content and responding to emails, if that's part of your business, that's great. But just like everything else, in moderation and in due time. When you're sitting there on the floor with your 4-year-old and your 2-year-old son, yes, I'm talking to myself, that's not the time to be scrolling. That's not the time to be doom scrolling, certainly not. It's not the time to be responding to stuff unless it's pertinent to that exact moment. So guys, if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, if you're going to be present, be present. All right, guys, another one here. Study the Bible with other men weekly. Study the Bible with other men weekly. So there's 3 things there. Study the Bible, that's 1. With other men, 2. And weekly. That's 3. Let's start from the end and we'll back up to the beginning. Here's the thing where most men's groups fail. They don't meet enough. So we expect very little of men, and so we'll do a once a month thing, or we'll maybe do a bi-weekly thing. But let's say you're doing a once a month thing and I miss. People are like, oh, well, he missed a month. No, I've now missed 2 months because I missed the month prior to that meeting and I've missed the month after that meeting. And if I miss another one, now I've missed a quarter of the year. What are the odds that I'm going to come back to do that thing if I've missed 3 months worth of it? I mean, most men, if they get behind, they're like, I just don't really want to play this game anymore. I get it. I totally get it. So weekly is what it has to be. That has to be the cadence. All right, study the Bible with other men. The value I get from the foraging table, I'm pointing to it because it's on the other side of the studio here, has been so tremendous. And it's tremendous because I am limited. Almost everyone that sat at that table, except for Terry Fakes, Matt Chandler, and Joby Martin, none of them are professional Christians. We're just dudes that can read, right? But we all have different backgrounds. We've grown up in slightly different, faith mechanisms and studying in different ways, and our brains work differently. And so when I study with other men, I just so happen to, turn on the cameras and the microphones and the lights and all that, and it works out well for y'all. But I'm learning so much because whenever I read, I only get what I know. Right? I only get what I'm able to absorb. I only get what the Holy Spirit is telling me in that moment. But when I study with other men, that's a big deal. And then also it's study the Bible with other men weekly. Study the Bible. Guys, the Logos Bible software, I talk about it every foraging table. So if you skip it, that is the most powerful Bible software on planet Earth. So if you want to do devotionals, it's in there. If you want to get into different translations, it's in there. If you want to do word studies, all that's in there. So guys, Logos Bible software, go check out the show notes for any foraging table episode. Logos Bible software. You can go there. You can get it at a discount. We've got a special link and all that. So we can put that in there for you. But guys, this is a big deal. So many men I know, they don't have a foxhole, they don't understand the Bible, they want deeper spiritual depth, and none of these men that are complaining about that study the Bible with other men weekly. Start there. Find 2 other guys, find 2 other dudes that will meet you this Tuesday at 6 a.m. or this Sunday at 7 p.m. or whenever the time works out. And I don't care, use the forging table materials, right? Start with Matthew, start with Galatians, start with Nehemiah. I don't care. Use those materials, have everyone study, and then have them listen to the episode, and then you can all discuss it together. But guys, if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, study the Bible with other men weekly. All right, next one here, get involved with a local church. Okay, get involved in a local church. So I'm going to be brief on this one because this is the thing that I want to say. And my wife and I were guilty of that, years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, before we started going to Faith Bible Church in Edmond, Oklahoma. Most people, when they look at church, they look at a church for what the church can do for them. Is this church going to serve my needs? Is the preaching my style that I like? Is the music something that I enjoy listening to? Is it close to my house? Do I like the people that are there? Do I feel like all those types of things? And there are varying levels of those things being appropriate or inappropriate. But the thing is you have yet to walk into a local body of believers and think to yourself, how can I serve this community? And I've also talked to a lot of men that are like, my wife and I, we've tried some churches, but our kids are young and it's kind of hard to get them to church. And, I would go to these churches, but it's kind of hard, and my job and my this, and we've all got excuses. But being involved in a local body of believers is not an option. So you listen to Lecrae Church close years ago and you decide, I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to do my own thing. I don't need the local body of believers. Well, guess what, champ? You don't get that. You don't get the right to make that decision, okay? It is a biblical mandate that you get involved in a local body of believers. And guess what? It's good for the body and it's good for you, right? You're never going to find a church that checks all your boxes. My church doesn't. Like I've told you guys so many times, the overwhelming positive thing about my church is that it's healthy. We don't got a lot of drama, and we got a bunch of kids running around. That's what I love about my church. There are things I don't like about it, okay? I'm not going to elucidate it here because I know a lot of people from my church listen to this, but I've talked about some of those things before. It doesn't check my boxes. If I could just snap my fingers and change certain things, I would do it. But the church is healthy, and guess what? I can serve there. I can teach Sunday school. I can, get involved in other ministries. I can give in a way that is sacrificial so that the bride of Christ can be glorified, right? And all those things. But if you're not even involved in a local church, you can't do that. So guys, if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, get involved in a local church. All right, we got a few more left here. Next one. This is a new one. New one, guys. Love new ones. Think in black and white terms. Think in black and white terms. So this is what I mean. I don't mean racially by any stretch of imagination. Too many people are comfortable with gray areas. Too many. And they're like, oh, well, the situation, their favorite word to use, even if they're dumb, is, well, it's nuance. Well, there's nuance here. And then you ask them a question like, okay, well, can you explain the nuance or the tension here? And they can't do it. They were just using a word to fill in a place because they've never actually thought through their philosophy on this particular issue. But so many people are like, oh, but there's just gradations and there's gray areas and different things like that. But the truth is when it comes to absolute morality and absolute truth, there is no gray. So the skinny on this is, if you're a Christian, then it follows that you believe in absolute truth, okay? Capital A, capital T, absolute truth. If you believe in absolute truth, then it follows that you should fight against thinking in gradations or nuance. Because what nuance is there to killing an unborn baby? So, Mr. or Mrs. Nuance, what is the nuance there? That is an innocent human being inside of their mother's womb make the affirmative argument for how there should be gray areas for whether or not we should be allowed to kill that innocent baby that is currently residing in their mother's womb. Seem like an extreme example? Exactly. I'm using it to make my point. Because even with subject matters that aren't nearly as important as life and unborn human life, we just get sucked into, oh, there's too much gray area. No, sometimes there's just black and white. And again, this goes into, is this a truth claim or is this an opinion? So you might think strawberry ice cream's the best. I might think vanilla's the best. And guess what? We could poll everyone on the planet and more of them could agree with you than me, but it doesn't make me wrong. It's just an opinion. It's not a provable thing. But if I were to say that strawberry ice cream exists and I'm holding it in my hand currently, that's either true or not true. Okay? There is no gray. There's no nuance in that situation. Either is or it's not. And so again, we get pulled into all these different directions, and it's usually by people that are non-believers and things like that. It's like, oh, let's philosophize on that and let's really think through it. No, it either is or it isn't. And now as humanity, we may not know a thing, but that doesn't mean that there's a gradation of the thing. So, on the forging table here before too long, you're going to hear us talking about Noah's Ark and different things like that. And well, how did they get that many animals? And what do they mean by kinds? And like where they were big, where did they put the poop and all that kind of things? We may not know the exact thing, but the exact thing does exist. It is a black or white thing. It either happened or it didn't. And it either happened in this way or it didn't happen in this way. And so, guys, I want you to be thinking less in gradations and nuance in 2025 and think in black and white terms. And if you do that, you will avoid being a crappy man this year. All right, next one here. Don't pretend that you know something that you don't. And I've said it this way before. Relish in the opportunity to look like an idiot. So this is something that guys do. Guys will get asked, oh, hey, have you heard of this band? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that band. And they haven't. Oh, hey, you know this car that I'm talking about? No, they'll be like, yeah. No, they haven't heard of that car. I used to be that guy as well, where someone would say, oh, have you seen this? Or do you know about this? Or do you know about this person? And you just respond like you don't want to be left out of the club. You don't want this kind of like disjointed FOMO. And so you're like, yeah, I do. But look for an opportunity to be an idiot in a situation. So I've used this example before. I'll use it again. Hunting. I did not grow up in a family that hunted. So I basically didn't do anything outdoors that didn't involve a ball, right? I was a ball sports kid and I was a straight A student. And so in order to maintain both of those things, I wasn't hunting, I wasn't camping, I wasn't fishing. And even if I wanted to do those things, no one in my family did any of those things, okay? Now, as an adult, I am learning how to hunt, okay? So this year, I think I'm getting a compound bow. And last year, for the first time, I bow hunted and I'm learning different things. But here's the deal. And my buddies who are teaching me to hunt, I'm basically a blue belt at hunting. So I'm not completely worthless, but I'm kind of still terrible, right? That's essentially what a blue belt is in jiu-jitsu. But I've looked like an idiot a lot. I've made mistakes a lot as it pertains to hunting, but I'm relishing those opportunities. Yes, they check my ego and it's like, oh God, I can't believe you made that mistake. What's wrong with you? But guess what? I'm learning. It's better than pretending that you know something. Because guess what? Let's say you're sitting there with a bona fide expert in a particular subject matter. Just pick the scenario for yourself. You're sitting there with a bona fide expert and they're asking you a question to see if you know the answer and you don't know the answer, but you slink around it. What you've done is you've robbed them of an opportunity to teach you something and you've robbed yourself of an opportunity to learn something. This can go for sports or Bible study or tinkering with something or fixing something or any number of things, guys. I always am quick to know, hey, Kyle, do you know how this rifle mechanism works? Nope, I don't. Can you show me? Hey, Kyle, do you know how to take this apart and put it back together? Absolutely not. Can you show me? And the thing is like they love the process of showing me, and then I love the process of learning. And the reason why I've grown to love the process of learning is because I've got two boys that are sponges, and if they can learn something because dad learned something from somebody else, that is a net positive. So if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, don't pretend that you know something that you don't. 3 more left. Next one here. Look for an opportunity to not be offended. Look for an opportunity to not be offended. Being offended is currency. In the day and age we're in, it's currency. Because if you are offended, you are a victim. And if you're a victim, that means that you are somehow more right than people that have not been victimized, right? I've elucidated that a lot. A lot of conservative commentators have done the exact same thing. But there are times in your life where you could get offended, where you literally were wronged, you were slighted, somebody was rude to you. And imagine how different things would look in that situation. And even just for you mentally, if you just took the opportunity to not be offended. So somebody bumps into you or somebody says something to you that's a little bit off color or things didn't go as you expected or any of those situations. Don't be offended. There are times to be offended, but for the most part, it is not going to serve you well to sit there and be the victim. So quick one there. But if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, look for an opportunity to not be offended. All right, next one here, get involved locally. Okay, so I've said this a lot of times. This was especially true last year because last year, as you saw, especially for my wrap-up episodes, the entire news cycle circled around the 2024 election. Oh boy, right? Especially on this show, on any shows, on anything that you talk to, like if your water cooler discussions, everything revolved around that. But then you would ask somebody like, hey, who'd you vote for mayor? They couldn't tell you who was even going for it. Hey, who'd you vote for sheriff? Shoot, I forgot to even do that. Hey, your kids are in public school, right? Yeah. Who's on the school board? No clue. But you know you're voting for Trump. You know you're voting for Kamala or whatever your situation is. You know more about what's going on in Ukraine than you do about what's going on in your neighborhood, right? How is that a positive thing? because politics used to be local and we've been convinced that it's now a national phenomenon. Okay. So for everybody listening to this, I promise you, you will be able to get more done on a local level than you will ever get to do on a national level. The odds of me speaking at a local political rally versus a national political rally are way higher on the local side than the national side. The odds of me being able to sway an election here in my local town are way better than a national election, just because math, guys. Like, there are local elections that are decided by a few dozen votes, right? We're never going to have a presidential election decided by a few dozen votes, and yet you've spent hundreds of hours consuming content about a race where you've already decided who you're going to vote for. So there are ways to get involved locally. There are local papers. I know, what year is it? But yes, you can get the local paper. You can go to the local chamber of commerce. There's Kiwanis clubs, Rotary clubs, different things. You can get an idea about what's happening in your city, your town, anywhere you live. Guys, if you want to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, get involved locally. And we are going to wrap up the 18 ways to avoid being a crappy man in 2025 with a new one. Okay, a new one. Don't only consume content from sources that you agree with. Okay. So for some of you, if you've gotten all the way to the end of this episode, at some point on those last 17, I probably made you feel not so good on the inside. Okay. I can be fairly blunt and fairly straightforward on the things that I talk about. And so some of those probably bristled up against you and you didn't really appreciate it that much. I get it. I understand it. But if you're only consuming content from sources where people agree with you constantly, you're not growing. You're deepening your level of understanding in your own point of view, but you're not understanding someone else's point of view. Okay. So if I want to understand atheism, okay, so somebody that is convinced that we are all a cosmic accident, right? So they don't believe in miracles, and yet they believe that time, space, and matter entered via a timeless, spaceless, and immaterial beginning. But aside from that, but I can't understand what's going on in the brain of an atheist if I only listen to William Lane Craig. Okay, or only listen to John MacArthur, or only read books or sermons from Charles Spurgeon. I'm not going to get a full-fledged idea because those guys aren't thinking in that way. They're thinking how they can speak to an atheist, but they're not thinking in that way. Same thing politically. If you're sitting there as a Republican, because I know most people that listen to this politically are more on the right than they are on the left. If you're thinking to yourself, how in the world could somebody be supporting Kamala Harris? Like, how could someone live in California and think that Gavin Newsom is a good person for them? Wait, how is it that Justin Trudeau has been in charge of a major Western nation for as long as he's been? Well, have you tried consuming content from people that actually support those individuals? I'm not saying they're going to sway you, right? Because the thing is with most of those people is they don't have morality on their side. They don't have correct data on their side. It's all just conjecture, right? It's all just philosophizing. It's definitely not black and white thinking unless it's racial thinking so that they can get one over on somebody on the conservative side of the ledger. But, I'll digress a little bit. But if you listen to news sources that aren't the ones you normally consume, you will get a better understanding of how those people think and why they think the way that they do. That will be of value to you in a myriad of circumstances, but even especially in a gospel circumstance. Because if I'm sharing the gospel with somebody that is unchurched and vehemently atheist, if all you've ever done is listen to, Nana teach Sunday school and you've listened just to your local pastor, you may not be ready for a situation like that. I'm not saying the Holy Spirit can't do what the Holy Spirit's going to do, but you're going to be kind of taken for a loop there. But if you've kind of gotten an idea of how these people think, if you've consumed the arguments of people that are on the other side, it's a net positive for you. So I'm not saying if you're a conservative that, hey, don't listen to Glenn Beck this year and don't listen to Matt Walsh this year and don't listen to Ben Shapiro, don't listen to Tucker Carlson, only listen to people that are popular on the left. But I am saying sneak it in a little bit here or there. And not just when you hear it on one of those other guys' shows, because that's selectively edited. It's helping them make their point. But listen to these other people. Give them the opportunity to sway you, even though the truth of it is that they are not going to be on the correct side of the ledger as it pertains to that issue. So guys, the last one here, of the top 18 ways to avoid being a crappy man in 2025, don't only consume content from sources that you agree with. So that is the list. Let me see if I can get it all in here. So start a gratitude list. Don't celebrate people that take shortcuts. Do really hard things that constantly challenges your ego and teaches you something. Oh, and I left one out earlier because I snuck it in there, but what was it? We're doing it live. No more I struggle with blank language. All right, no more I struggle with blank language. Let's get back into the list here. Don't be late. Practice pre-decision, learn to fight, be extra nice to support staff and service providers, and make sure you say thank you. Don't let sports ruin your night. No porn, no jerking off. If you're going to be present, be present. Study the Bible with other men weekly. Get involved in the local church. Think in black and white terms. Don't pretend that you know something you don't. Look for an opportunity to not be offended. Get involved locally, and don't only consume content from sources that you agree with. That's the list, guys. I hope it's helpful to you. But before we let you go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. I got 3 links for you today. One is to our donation page. Again, guys, we are a donation-based ministry. If you want to see this content getting out to more guys around the globe, we need your help. Hop on board, be a monthly donor. Also, I've got a link to where you can join the waitlist for Dominion. If you don't know what that is, Undaunted.Life/Dominion. That link is here as well. And also a link to the Logos Bible software. It's our link to where you can get that at a discount. Guys, if you're going to study the Bible this year, make sure you can go as deep into that subject matter as you want to. We really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.